Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. If you enjoying this fanfic then press the like button and subscribe my channel.
Let's start a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto x Sakura x Hinata x Hanabi, Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this and comment for next part. And now let's start the fanfic. It was a clear warm spring morning without a cloud in the sky. Naruto was sleeping in his small bed at his home when several loud bangs on his front door tried wake him. Naruto groaned slightly and tried to go back to sleep. The banging came again but more forceful than before. He covered his head with the pillow trying to ignore the sound. Naruto, get your butt down here and open this door before I break it down. An aggravated female voice yelled at him from outside. Oh great Sakura-chan, he mumbled to himself unenthusiastically as he blinked sleepily a few times while he held his pillow. Guess I'd better get up before she knocks it down, again. He got out of bed and yawned while stretching his ribs. Coming Sakura-chan, he yelled while scratching his butt before putting on his Tsunade and Jiraiya house slippers. His slippers had big stuffed heads over the toes of Jiraiya on the left and Tsunade on the right. He thought they were the weirdest gift ever when he got them from Shikamaru for his 20th birthday, until he showed him how they worked. Flashback. Naruto picked up small box wrapped in red wrapping paper. He said excitedly as he shook the box and it made no sound. He looked at the tag. From Shikamaru. He ripped the paper off the box in typical Naruto fashion and pulled out a pair of Jiraiya and Tsunade bed slippers. He said as he eyed them for a second. He giggled a bit. I kinda like them, but what's with Tsunade's face? She's never smiling, he said, pointing to the big smile on one of the slippers. She looks more like this. He took his palms and vigorously rubbed his cheeks until they were red and put on his best grumpy Tsunade look. Everyone laughed, but Sakura, who had a vein in her head bulging and gritted her teeth. Naruto, she said, soaked in venom as a warning. Shikamaru, seeing things might get out of hand, jumped in and said, Hey Naruto, put them on and follow me to the hall. I'll show you how they work. Shikamaru said, Hey, I might not have an IQ of 200, but I know what slippers are for. Naruto said in offense. Shikamaru sighed and scratched the back of his head. What a pain. They are not just slippers, just come on. Naruto followed him to the much darker hallway and put on the slippers. Okay, now just run a little bit of chakra into your feet. Shikamaru said. Naruto didn't see the point, but did as he was asked. He gathered a bit of chakra in his feet and watched the eyes of the slippers dimly light up. He could see about 8 feet in front of him. I don't get it, he said at first. Then, oh, I still don't get it. Shikamaru's sweat dropped. Well, have you ever got up in the night to go to the bathroom and stubbed your toe on something in the dark? He said. Naruto blinked again. The gears in his head finally circa. Wow, this is the best non-ramen gift I've ever gotten. Shikamaru snickered softly. Yeah, Choji is always getting up in the night to go to the bathroom and stubbing his foot on something. So I made him some like these for his birthday. He really liked them too. End of flashback. Naruto made it down the stairs to the living room and was just about to start unlocking the door when he heard. That's it. There was an earth-shattering sound as the door splintered in on him, flying in all directions. Wood showered him at point-blank range and bounced off of him. Naruto was clearly used to this by now, as he always kept himself charged with a small amount of sage chakra to deflect the debris. Morning Sakura-chan, he said in a zombified manner as he turned around to head to the kitchen for some breakfast. Naruto UZ, she yelled until Sakura finally saw what he was wearing. He was in his childlike panda nightcap, sanin slippers and hard boxers. The problem was that he had morning wood and his girth was so big it was giving him a very uncomfortable looking wedgie that he didn't seem to notice. Sakura got the nosebleed that looked like a fountain. Naruto was already eating his morning ramen when Sakura came to her senses and walked into the kitchen blushing. Naruto was sitting on his knees at plain small wooded square table that could set four on the floor. There was a steaming bowl of ramen in front of him that he was stirring to cool it off. Naruto, how come you didn't have your robe on when you answered the door? Sakura asked with an annoyed look while blushing. Well, it's not like I had time to get it on before you demolished my front door, he said sarcastically as he rolled his eyes and then lifted his chopstick full on noodles to his mouth. Grr still, she said in playful manner while glaring at him as she walked over to the table. There's cereal in the cupboard if you're hungry, I know you hate ramen in the morning, Naruto said while looking up at Sakura. I still don't see how you can eat something so heavy for breakfast, she replied. He looked up from his ramen and said, you know I'll always have this first thing in the morning. She sighed. You know it's almost 11:30 a.m. right? Oh shit. It's time for Konohamaru training. I've got to go Sakura-chan. He panicked. He tried to run off, but was stuck running in place as Sakura was holding his wrist to the table to keep him from getting away. Tsunade wants to see you ASAP. That's what I came to tell you, she said with a huff. Erga. He edged curiously. What about? Did she lose her sake again? You know there hasn't been any S-ranked mission since the Akatsuki was defeated, he said as he struggled to get free. I'm not sure what it is, but do you really want to piss her off? She replied. He thought about it for a moment. Not if my life is at stake, which it normally seems to be. Okay, I'm going. He poofed into smoke and was gone. Grr. I think he likes to make me think he's sleeping in with his clones, Sakura growled as her eyes narrowed the place he had just been. Meanwhile at Training Ground 36 near the Hyuga compound, the real Naruto and 400 clones had been working on a new more cost-effective jutsu most of the morning, while Konohamaru had himself and 4 shadow clones on a small fish pond trying to walk on water without disturbing the fish in the pond. The training ground was in a wooded area in an open clearing. A small stream in the back of the area gurgled with the sound of flowing water. Naruto was wearing his sage outfit that consisted of a white long-sleeve shirt with black sleeves, a white trench coat with black flames embroidered at the bottom and his signature swirl symbol on the back. He also was wearing white pants and black ninja sandals. Naruto had just devised this training a few days ago to help him with his stealth and his chakra control. This is impossible, Konohamaru yelled in frustration as he threw his arms down. What's the point of a training method that all it does is keep my feet from getting wet when I walk on water? He said in frustration. Naruto sighed. It looked like he'd have to explain it again. This isn't about keeping your feet from getting wet. It's about you having your chakra control honed to such a level that you aren't wasting any of it. For example, right now you can only do 2 Rasengans before you almost can't stand anymore. After you master this you should be able to do 3 and still be standing, Naruto said in a frustrated manner. When you do this right, your feet will not be lightly in the water when you're standing on it, you will be moving in sync with every ripple and motion. When you're doing that, then the fish under you will not jump and move every time you take a step, Naruto said bluntly. But it's still boring. Why don't you teach me how to do the Rasenshuriken instead? He said hopefully. Naruto rolled his eyes because he had been pestering him to teach him how to do it for 8 months. That again? Fine, I'll remind you once more. 1. You don't have enough chakra for it. 2. Your body isn't tough enough to handle the training for it, as part of the damage it does will come back on you until you learn how to throw it. So it would probably kill you before you learn to throw it. 3. It's a SS level forbidden jutsu that Tsunade would kill me for teaching you. Besides, you'd need to be at sage level to handle it, Naruto said sympathetically as his eyes glazed over for a few seconds. Crap, speaking of Tsunade, she wants to talk to me and she doesn't seem happy. Naruto frowned. How am I supposed to get this when you're not even here to tell me what I'm doing wrong? It's been forever since you taught me any new jutsu. How am I going to make it to sage level like this? Let alone Hokage level, Konohamaru said irritatedly. And Naruto thought he was impatient. Konohamaru had only been at this for 3 days. Well, have you ever thought that all this training is for something? Naruto said flatly. The teen blinked a few times, a bit dumbfounded. Naruto sighed again and said, "You do know that the first step to becoming a sage is summoning, right? In which you need a lot of chakra control. Here, let me show you something." Naruto reached into his pouch and pulled out a small purple scroll that he laid out on the grassy ground. He put up the seal of the tiger and shouted, "Unseal." After the puff of smoke cleared, there was a giant 3 feet tall purple scroll. Dispel your clones and come over here, Konohamaru. He said with a wave of his hand. Konohamaru dispelled his clones with a loud pop and walked off the pond over to where Naruto was sitting on the ground cross-legged with the scroll ready to open it. Naruto turned the scroll around and opened about 4 feet of it to reveal the names Jiraiya, Namikaze Minato and Naruto Uzumaki. Under each name was a hand print in blood. Do you know what this is? Naruto asked. Isn't that the scroll Master Jiraiya used to carry on his back? He asked curiously. Yeah, but do you know what it is? Naruto asked, looking at the dumbfounded teen. Konohamaru just gave him a blank look. Naruto just looked up and groaned while thinking to himself. No wonder my teachers were always calling me dumb. Teaching is a lot of work. Seriously, what has Ebisu even been teaching his squad? It's a summoning contract, Naruto said and paused for a long moment for effect. Suddenly Konohamaru's dumbfounded look turned to a smile. Konohamaru was clearly shocked before saying, "Wow, this is the same scroll the 4th Hokage used to make his summoning contract with the Toad Sages." He said in awe, looking at the name Namikaze Minato. Naruto smiled and said, "Yes, it's the very one." After his initial excitement was over, his face went blank as he seemed to finally realize something. You mean that you'll make me your apprentice?" He stammered. Naruto chuckled a bit before saying, "Yeah, that's the idea. Now you know why I'm putting you through all this training, but before I teach you the summoning jutsu, you're going to have a lot better chakra control." Konohamaru jumped up and down in excitement. "Anyway, guess I need to see what Tsunade wants. So training is over for today, seeing as how you need to get lunch before you start your squad training this afternoon," the young sage said as he got up and resealed the scroll. Konohamaru beamed and said, "Okay Naruto, I'll see you later." Naruto dispelled his clones and set off for the Hokage's office. Konohamaru headed off to Ichiraku's ramen stand for lunch. Hanabi Hyuga mentally cursed to herself as they were leaving. The young Hyuga had just turned 15 years old. She was just over 5 feet 3 inches tall and 120 pounds. She had a very petite figure with curvy hips and a size of a full C-cup and still growing. She wore gray pants and a gray vest with a fishnet undershirt and had the trademark milky white eyes that everyone in the Hyuga clan had. The young girl was named the Hyuga heiress after her father decided that she was a better match for job than her older sister Hinata. She was also blossoming into a very beautiful young woman and had taken to spying at their new guests at Training Ground 36. She was at the far end of the training ground, halfway up a tree, using her Byakugan to watch them whenever she could get away. The young heiress had taken an interest in just how powerful the so-called hero of the village was. She was rather intrigued to find out that her father let him use one of their clan training grounds. She had overheard her father and her cousin Neji talking a few weeks ago and didn't mean to eavesdrop, but just couldn't help overhearing about the arrangement. But so far, after 2 weeks of watching, she was disappointed. She hadn't seen any amazing jutsu, and the details to the fight between Naruto and the Akatsuki were a closely guarded secret. All Naruto did was the mass shadow clone jutsu and practice taijutsu, walking up and down trees or water, setting, meditating, and many other boring things. The only one that was even remotely interesting to watch was when one of his clones would be doing this weird hold your kunai in front you and appear 50 meters away. But even this got boring after a few minutes of watching. Then there were the most boring of all the clones to watch, the few that just read books or scrolls all day or the ones that just slept on the ground. She rolled her eyes at the thought of it. She sighed at another day without anything interesting happening as she jumped down from the tree she was in. She turned around and ran into something hard which caused her to falling on her backside. The young Hyuga rubbed her head and looked up to see what she had been so careless to run into. She saw a figure standing before her with near-perfect chakra coils that were overflowing with power that could only came from a lifetime of training. The young woman grimaced as she deactivated her Byakugan to see her father standing over her with a very stern look of his face. Hanabi. The clan leader said in a none-too-happy tone. The whole compound has been looking for you for an hour. How many times have I told you never leave the main compound without an escort or telling me personally? He said sternly. She meekly replied while he dragged her away by her wrist. Yes, father. Hanabi noticed they were going the opposite direction from the compound. Father, aren't we going the wrong direction? She asked as Hiyashi was dragging her through the woods of the training grounds. The compound is the other way. She said carefully. Hiyashi replied. No, we aren't. The Hokage has summoned you and I've been looking high and low for you. Hanabi's mind started racing. She mentally thought. Why would the Hokage be summoning me? She was technically a genin, even though she had been homeschooled for her ninja training as she was the heiress to the Hyuga clan. She needed more training than the academy taught, like how to act with nobles and how to deal with clan problems. As they were racing through an area of small willows trees that were too small to leap through, Hiyashi swiped limbs out of the way as they passed and one of the thin sharp limbs smacked back into Hanabi's face, leaving a small cut on her left cheek. She winced at the sudden sting, but she didn't dare complain. A few minutes later they were standing outside the Hokage's office and they could clearly hear Naruto and Tsunade arguing quite loudly. An annoyed voice, obviously Naruto's, said. This is totally stupid. Why do you want me to take part in the Chunin exams? I've already completed my sage training, for crying out loud. It just feels wrong for me to take part in this. Tsunade sighed. Why would you feel that way, Naruto? This is nothing more than a formality for you. Naruto was clearly irritated. Well, look at it this way. Imagine you're a genin and you're taking the Chunin exam at the age of 13 and Jiraiya in his prime shows up. If you were him it would just be a formality, but for the genin that he took the scroll from on the second part of the test it would just be overkill. Sure, they have got time to get another set, but someone that powerfully shouldn't be there in the first place. It's the Chunin exams, not the Hokage exams. Tsunade sighed. He had a very valid point, but I know Naruto, but the second part of the test you took 7 years ago was meant to test the ninjas in a real-life scenario. And in a real life you're likely to come up against more powerful shinobi when you're just a genin. They need to know how to handle that situation. She said emphatically with a sigh. Besides, we are still one hidden village among 5. To raise through the ranks the villages we have set up the exams so no one village becomes too powerful over the others. Please understand. It may be a formality, but it's one you'll have to deal with. The Hokage said firmly. Yeah, I know. I was fighting a losing battle the moment we started this. I'm not a fool anymore. I knew it would turn out this way. He said with a huff. But still. By the way, even if I am a sage, am I doing this exam solo? I thought you had to be a 3-man team to even sign up. So are Hiyashi and Hanabi my teammates? He said with a curious look as he looked over at the closed door of her office. Both Hyugas gave a start listening at the door. Hiyashi thought to himself. Can all sages do that? Knowing when others are near and knowing who they are. I never saw or heard of Jiraiya do that. Lady Tsunade gave him a questioning look, tilting her head to one side. Hiyashi Hyuga. Why would I send the Hyuga clan head to? She stopped in mid-sentence and shook her head in confusion. Why on earth would you ask that? She asked with a puzzled look. Naruto flatly stated. Because they are right outside the door. Tsunade had forgotten that her little drinking binge with her new assistant had left her with alcohol poisoning, and she had even forgotten to put up the soundproof seal for privacy. Mentally cursed herself and thought, "Great. Half the town has probably heard us arguing." The Hyuga head saw what position they were in and cleared his throat loudly and knocked on the door. "Hokage-sama, we are here as you requested," he stated awkwardly. Tsunade put her head in her hands and sighed. It was definitely going to be a long day. "Come in, Hiashi." The door opened and the two Hyugas filed in while taking a look at her office. The Hokage was sitting at her desk still holding her head. She had a 1.5 foot tall stack of paperwork on her desk, and another stack that seemed to have fallen off her desk while arguing with Naruto was in a messy pile beside the desk. On the other side was a much smaller stack of papers that was probably the done side. Right in front of her desk was an unhappy and slightly frustrated Naruto. He turned and smiled. "Oh, hello, Hiashi and Hanabi-chan," he said cheerfully. They returned the greeting with a slight bow. Hanabi was a bit surprised at Naruto's greeting. One minute he was yelling so loud the whole village could hear him, whether they wanted to or not, and the next he was smiling like nothing had ever happened. He certainly is strange, she thought. Tsunade, are you going to tell me what this is about, or do I guess again?" he asked intently. The Hokage took her head out of her hands and said, "You're right, you have to have a 3-man team to participate in the exams. Meet Hanabi Hyuga, your new teammate." Hiashi's eyes went wide. He had asked the Hokage to place Hanabi with a powerful and competent genin. He had practically begged the Hokage, stressing that she was the Hyuga heiress and he wanted to make sure she wasn't with someone that was unsuited for being a ninja. Like Shikamaru, the lazy Jonin, or some nut job like Sasuke. Well, he thought as he scratched his chin. There was no question Naruto is powerful, but competent, yes and no. I doubt they would run into anything Naruto himself couldn't handle and come back unscathed. I am more worried about him using one of his ninjutsu that could level a mountain and my daughter getting caught in the blast. Naruto has 2 speeds when it comes to anything: overboard, full throttle, and fast asleep. To everyone that actually knew him, this is obvious. Well, it could be worse, I guess. I'll get Naruto's Team 7 file to see what kind of teamwork I should work with Hanabi on, he thought. Hanabi was shocked. She knew she was going to be put into a genin squad soon. She thought she would be the oldest in her team, seeing as how she had to wait 2 extra years before entering school because of her clan and heiress training. But to be almost 6 years his junior. She clearly didn't see that coming. She had to admit she was very curious about Naruto. This would give her the chance to see if he really was befitting the name of sage. She thought it was unlikely that this goofball was a real sage. Naruto, seeing the stunned look on the two Hyugas' faces, wasted no time after Tsunade told him she would be his new teammate. He walked up to the young Hyuga girl who was still deep in thought. He looked her over from a few different angles until she seemed to remember where she was and snapped out of daze with an uncomfortable look on her face. Naruto gave the Hokage a questioning look and she returned it. He looked back at Hanabi and said, "Ya know, you're kinda cute," Naruto said with a big flirtatious smile. She blinked a few times. What? She thought in shock. She went slightly pink in the cheeks and looked away, clearly irritated. The nerve of this guy. Hitting on me in front of the Hokage and my father. Naruto gave a sigh of relief and draped his wrist over the young girl's shoulders while looking at the floor. Thank Kami you didn't turn red and faint. I was beginning to wonder if all Hyuga girls went through that phase. At least you're not like Sakura-chan at that age. She would have hauled off and hit me, he said, clearly relieved. The Hokage started laughing hard as she threw her head back. Hiashi went pink with embarrassment for his eldest daughter, and Hanabi's face was showing that she was a bit mad and didn't quite get everything being said. She obviously hated feeling like a kid at the grown-ups table. After the Hokage finally managed to stop laughing, she said while still giggling a bit, "You two have a lot to learn about each other." The The Hokage then reached into her desk and pulled out 2 slips of paper and walked over to Naruto. Here, these are free VIP passes to the new sushi and steak house that opened up on the east side of the river. They are about to expire and I don't feel like eating there today. You two go grab lunch and get better acquainted. The exams are next month after all, she said with a smile. Naruto took the passes and looked directly over at Hiashi. Okay, Hiashi-san, let's go get lunch, he said jokingly with a wave of his hand. Everyone's sweat dropped. What? He said questioningly. He said, looking at everyone, then chuckled. You didn't honestly think I was serious, did you? The room seemed to relax a bit. He then looked at Tsunade. Thank you, he said in earnest and gave her a kiss on the cheek. He walked back over to Hanabi and said, okay, let's go, Hanabi-chan, but we are going to need to take a bit of a unconventional way there. Hanabi was off in dazed shock at what Naruto had just done to the Hokage. Oh my god. Did he just kiss the Hokage? How the hell does he still have a pulse? I heard she almost killed a temple guard from the Rain County for telling her that her shirt was coming undone and they're celibate monks. Naruto said, Hanabi-chan. Hanabi-chan, he said, waving his hand in front of her eyes. He sighed. Oh well, my stomach is growling. So I'll guess I'll have to use my other way to get us there, he stated. He got behind a very shocked Hanabi and wrapped his arms around her before drawing a kunai in front of them. There was no smoke, no flash, nothing. 1 second they were there and the next they were gone. Hiashi looked around in shock before finally speaking. Was that? She sighed. Yes, it was that jutsu. He learned it, yes, but he's still not as good as the fourth was with it, yet. He's only been practicing it for 8 months and he's almost ready to try visiting the case cage with it. Hiashi thought. Wow, I knew he was powerful, but to learn that jutsu to that degree in such a short time. I'm starting to wonder if anyone in history will be a match for him by the time he's 30. Tsunade gave him a tired look and said, something else you wanted, Hiashi? He straightened himself up and presented himself respectfully. Yes, I am not so sure making them teammates is such a wise decision, Hokage. Hiashi replied, choosing his words carefully. She rolled her eyes. Okay, she said as she slammed her hands down on her desk. She was clearly getting downright irate with him. First off, I'm late for lunch. Second, I'm out of sake. Third, my assistant is out sick and I've got a ton of paperwork to do by myself. Besides, you practically begged me to put her on a team with the best. You know the old saying, be careful what you wish for. But, Hiashi said before Tsunade cut him off. Look, I already said both of them have a lot to learn from each other, she stated. Hiashi went wide eyes. You don't mean, well, you know. I've heard Naruto has been quite the playboy in recent years. Ino, Hinata and Sakura. He paused for a moment. And it looks like you just set them up on a cute date, he snapped. For Kami's sake, she is only 15. Tsunade rolled her eyes. I guess I'll have to skip lunch. Put the privacy seal on the door, I'll get the window, she said flatly as she got up. After the seals were in place, they sat down. What I tell you in this room, never leave it till I declassified it, got it? She said threateningly while pointing at him. Yes, Hokage-sama, he said respectfully. He wasn't used to getting near killing intent from Tsunade. Okay. She took in a deep breath and released it. I'll just put it bluntly as it saves the most time. Before I even took the job of Hokage, I named Naruto as being worthy of being my successor. Jiraiya always told me, he's young, or, he's not ready yet, but you know what, Hiashi? I've always felt I had a better understanding of Naruto than anyone else, and you know what? I've always felt I was standing in his shadow, she stated while her shoulders slumped with a sad look on her face. If it wasn't for Naruto and his ideals of becoming Hokage, I would have never taken the job. Everyone thinks it was the first Hokage's or the third Hokage's ideas I follow, but in reality, since I decided to take the job, it's always been his ideals. If it's his shadow I'm standing in, then it's like the night sky and the stars are the few glimmering hopes that I've actually done right, but most of it is covered in the darkness of failure. She stood up and turned to look out the window at the Hokage monument while crossing her arms. When news of Jiraiya's passing was first told to him, his first reaction wasn't to feel sad or lonely. He was furious, mainly at me for letting him go. He was probably the only one in the village to would tell me straight to my face that I messed up. It hurt a lot at first, but after someone told me what everyone was avoiding telling me, I felt a bit better. Then when pain attacked the village and no one could even come close to being that Saika's equal in battle, I don't even think I would have been able to put up much of a fight against him even if I did have all my chakra at the time. Naruto showed up and practically shooed me away like I was some child on the battlefield and took pain head on. Destroying all 7 paths of pain by himself even when pain was so powerful he'd already leveled the village with a single jutsu. When pain got the upper hand at one point and it looked like he was going to capture Naruto, he messed up. He nearly killed Hinata, which forced out the Kyuubi's chakra. Yumoto even told me for a few seconds he brought out all 9 tails to bear before mastering himself again in his sage form. He bared chakra so powerful it's like standing in an incinerator in its 4-tail form. He bared the pain of being in that form while fighting that demon for control and all to crush pain and save the village. It nearly cost him his life. I'm sure you've read the report on his final fight with Sasuke, you know, the one that left the Uchiha blind. She was still looking out the window at the Hokage monument. Hiashi stunned at the Hokage's words. He felt a bit awkward before he spoke. Yes Tsunade, but what does all that have to do with pairing him with Hanabi? He cringed at the thought, waking of the Hokage up out of her ramblings. Tsunade was still mostly lost in her thoughts but replied. That's simple. Have you ever seen Naruto eat? Imagine the Hokage sitting at the Fire Lord's personal dining table eating like that. Hiashi looked up thoughtfully and brought up an image of Naruto in the formal Hokage garb sitting next to the Fire Lord inhaling ramen. Ha 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 HMMPH, ha 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 ha. Hiashi laughed for a few minutes before mastering himself again and wiping a tear out of his eye. Yes, I see your point, Lady Tsunade-sama, he said with a rare smile still on his face. She turned from the window to see the normally stern man smiling in front of her desk. His laughter had helped bring her back from the sad depths of her own mind. She was in a noticeably better mood. Yes, I figured that if anyone could teach the knuckleheads something about manners, grace, and nobility, it would be the Hyuga heiress. Besides, you wanted to make sure Hanabi was relatively safe. So it was a no-brainer when I thought of it. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone, as the old saying goes. She stated with a slight grin. Yeah, Hiashi, be careful what you wish for, you just might get it. Just like this time. She thought silently. Hiashi said. Well, then what would Naruto need to teach my Hanabi? Guts. I can't believe I thought that. It's like Jiraiya is in my head for some reason. Aw, what the hell? She stood up and looked at him sternly and stuck out her arm closed fist like Naruto did when he was younger and said. Guts. Hiashi was speechless at the Hokage's strange gesture and stared at her blankly. In the corner of her office, laughter erupted. Tsunade looked over to see Kakashi doubled over, his hands on his knees. His book from the Makeout series was on the floor and he was having a laughing fit. Hitaki, how long have you been there? She yelled angrily. When Kakashi finally mastered himself a few minutes later, he said. Long enough to see. Kakashi steeled himself with a stern look and punched his fist out in front of him and said. Guts. He entered another laughing fit. Tsunade was grinding her teeth in anger while charging her fist up with chakra before charging the laughing Jonin. When she was 3 feet from blasting him out of her office, his look suddenly changed to his normal unreadable face and he was holding up an official cage scroll. She stopped less than an inch from smashing his face through her office wall. Her arm was still quivering with rage. She snatched the scroll from his hands and said. Don't think this is over, Hitaki. Her words dripped with venom. She angrily went back to her desk and opened the scroll. Dear Hokage, thank you for your incredible advice. I'm sure you helped avoid open war with the village hidden in the mist, the village hidden in the waves, the village hidden in the rain, and the land of rice paddies. How did you even come up with such an ingenious plan? After 6 months, all of their nations are thriving. Sincerely, Cage Gara. Flashback. 19-year-old Naruto was sitting behind the Hokage's desk going through stacks paperwork. An Anbu in a cat mask had just come into the office and he didn't seem to be feeling too well. He was leaning on the wall just inside the office for support while holding his stomach. A familiar voice spoke. Naruto, what are you doing? When the Hokage sees this, she's going send you flying across town again. Hey, he said in an offended manner. Tsunade had her birthday last night and you know how that ends up. Kakashi. Kakashi knew this all too well. She would be forced to greet tons of high-ranking ninjas, nobles and lords until she was blue in the face. She would get fed up with it and grab anyone that was nearby and drag them to the bar to get drunk. Kakashi was the unlucky person near her when she decided to go to the bar last night. That still doesn't expel. Kakashi suddenly went green and he ran for the bathroom on the other side of the office. Naruto went back to sorting paperwork into 20 to 30 smaller piles, but it was hard to work with his former sensei in the bathroom making the most horrible heaving sounds. After 10 minutes of this, Naruto gave up sorting. The noise was just too distracting. He crossed his arms and waited for the noise to stop. Another 5 minutes passed and it was finally quiet. He had just picked up the next paper in the stack when Kakashi came out of the bathroom looking like hell holding his cat mask in his hand. That still doesn't explain what you're doing, Naruto, he said shakily. Naruto sighed. His cheerful face was replaced with a very sad one. You know, I've been dating Sakura-chan lately. Well, I was so caught up with doing things with her that I totally forgot about Lady Tsunade's birthday. When Sakura-chan took me to the celebration, I didn't even have a gift to give her, he said sadly as he looked down. Kakashi eyed him as carefully as he could with a stomach that wouldn't sit still. I thought about it, and if I was Hokage, the best gift I could receive would probably be a day off from all the paperwork, but it's been pretty hard to do. A lot of this stuff I just don't understand who to put on the missions. Like that stack. He pointed at the largest stack that stood almost 3 feet high next to the desk. It accounted for about half of the total paperwork. Kakashi was starting to feel that his own gift of socks was seriously beginning to pale in comparison to Naruto's thoughtful gift. He sighed. At least I should make sure he doesn't make a mess of things, he thought. He began going through the 3 feet tall stack of papers. No wonder Naruto didn't know who to put on these missions. They are all recon and information gathering missions for Anbu level ninjas, and he doesn't know who all the Anbu ninjas are. He started going through the stack, putting down Anbu teams for missions almost without thinking about it. Kakashi realized another of the problems Naruto was having. There was almost a month's worth of missions here, and he was trying to assign them to everyone in a day instead of spreading them out over a month's time. The Hokage has been being quite the layabout recently, he thought sourly while eyeing one of the missions. They worked through the morning until Kakashi went to grab the next stack absent-mindedly. Hey sensei, those are the genin missions I've already assigned. You don't need to do those. Kakashi eyed his work and grimaced. Naruto, you have totally messed up on which teams to assign for these missions. If these had been Chunin rank or higher missions, this would have been a disaster. You sent the Taijutsu type team to do negotiation missions, the Genjutsu type teams to manual labor on the docks, and the Ninjutsu type team used to entertain young children. What possible reason could you have for handing out missions this way? Are you trying to intentionally assign missions to the wrong people? Naruto scratched the back of his head vigorously. Kami and I thought I was dumb. No, I set out the missions for the genin right. The genjutsu users are physically weak, so I sent them to the dock for manual labor so they will get stronger. I sent the taijutsu users into a mission where they need to use their head instead of their muscles so they got smarter. Lastly, I sent the ninjutsu users to entertain kids because it takes a lot of social control and restraint using ninjutsu to entertain them. But I set a few of the Hyuga medics in training to watch the ninjutsu users just in case it got out of hand. They need to learn not to depend on one form of jutsu all the time, or at least that's what I learned. He replied frustratedly. Kakashi thought to himself. He's using the missions just like training. It's actually ingenious at the genin level, but it would have been a disaster at the chunin level. Well, what are you going to do when they all come back and have failed because they're not suited for their missions? That will hurt our reputation and our future job offers. He stated knowingly. That's why I gave them missions inside the village at a discounted rate and told the employers they would probably take a few days to get their work down. Naruto said irritatedly. Kakashi thought. He certainly covers all his bases. If he had understood who all the Anbu Black Ops were, then he probably wouldn't have needed my help much at all. Almost all the paperwork was done, but a very small stack of papers not 7 sheets high. A very hungover Tsunade dragged herself through the door of the office. What the hell are you two doing here? I didn't summon you for any missions today. She stated, half asleep and the other half hungover. It's okay, Tsunade-chan, I decided to do your paperwork for you so you could take a day off. Naruto said happily. Tsunade replied, half asleep. Oh, thank you, Naruto, that's so sweet of you. She said while climbing onto the green sofa in her office to go back to sleep. You what? She yelled as she snapped back awake and stood up. Kakashi raised his hand to calm her and said. Calm down, Tsunade. Believe it or not, he actually had all the missions sectioned out into types when I got here. The only missions he handed out were a few D-ranked ones to a few genin teams. Though I didn't agree with his choices of genin to send on the missions at first. I do now that he's explained why he sent them on those specific missions. She fell back down on sofa and held her head in her hands. Why am I dreading tomorrow when all this comes back to haunt me? At least show me what that small stack that's left is. She asked, half asleep, half dreading the answer. Kakashi stammered. I don't really know, to be honest. He will not let me have that stack and tells me those are the ones he understands best and they are the easiest to do of all the paperwork. The Hokage groaned as she got up off the sofa and walked over to her desk and slid the papers out from under Naruto's fingers. They're just economic reports from the mist, rain and mountain countries and 2 requests for loans from the swamp and rice paddy countries. Which we will decline, and a mission from the land of the waves complaining about a overabundance of oxen in the southern part of the land of waves AANNDD. She looked at Naruto clearly unimpressed. Naruto said while frustratedly scratching the back of his head. Well, all their problems are economic, mainly stemming from food shortages in the long run. The mountain country doesn't have a lot of land to grow food on. So they depend on selling their ore to make weapon and tools for income. Then they use it to buy food from other nations. The Mist Village hasn't recovered from losing so many ninja 8 years ago when Orochimaru got a lot of them to join him in making the village hidden in the sound. It seems they have a stock of seeds, just nowhere to grow them. The swamp country has almost nothing. So it's really poor because the swamp lands are too watery to support any staple food for its people. Even though the soil under the water of the swamps is ideal for growing crops. The land of rice paddies is also a poor country too, but it has a lot of manpower. They have a lot of flat land, but it's only good for growing prairie grass. They depend on shipping imports for food, but with the shortages in other nations it's becoming too expensive for their people. I still don't get where this is going. She stated in a dangerous warning manner. Naruto continued. Well, the way I see it, if the Hidden Mist Village sells the land of rice paddies their seeds in exchange for food, later they are set. If the rain country unblocks the 2 rivers they dammed up, then the rice country will have all the water they need for growing crops. If the swamp country digs out its swamp marsh soil and takes it to the rice country in exchange for food, later they are set. We wouldn't even need to protect the shipments. Hell, who's gonna steal dirt? If the mountain country provided the farming tools they need, then everyone will have plenty of food later. He said. Tsunade was starting to see what he meant and nodded. So where does this C-ranked wave mission come in at? She asked curiously. He smiled and said, they are going to need a way to transport all that stuff from one nation to the other, especially the swamp nation at the beginning. Oxen are perfect for pulling a wagon or dragging a plow. It seems Naruto did find a solution to all their problems. Well, I do see one problem. The Fire Lord had a standing trade embargo order with the mountain country not to sell large quantities of ore or metal of any kind to the Rice Paddy Nation. They tried to attack the Fire Nation almost 40 years ago, and that's one of the reasons they are such a poor country today. She said. She sighed. The Fire Lord probably will not lift that agreement without a good reason, Naruto. He looked at her. Well, an economically stable country doesn't need to start a war to get the things its people needs to survive, and no country is going to willingly starve to death. They will steal from another country to survive, which will start a war. Besides, it couldn't hurt to give them the idea and ask the Fire Lord to adjust his trade embargo so it excludes farming tools. He said with a smile. End of flashback. Tsunade fell onto her desk depressed. Kakashi was looking over her shoulder reading the scroll. Why are you all depressed looking? This looks like good news. He asked with a smile. Because it was Naruto's idea. He may have caused me more trouble than help with that birthday gift, but he did find the most important papers that I would have overlooked. And solved problems of 4 countries in a matter of 20 minutes. I'm starting to worry if I'm even cut out to be Hokage anymore. She stated with a depressed look on her face. Kakashi got a slight worried expression. Don't say that, Tsunade. If I hadn't been there to help him, he would have given all the missions he didn't understand to Shikamaru's squad. We probably wouldn't have seen them for 5 years. He said with a laugh. The Hokage laughed as well. You're probably right. Hokage-sama, if I might ask, who's the third member of Naruto's team? Hiashi asked. She looked up at him and gave him a disregarding look. Oh, that. Sasuke Uchiha, she said absent-mindedly. Hiashi started with horror. You can't mean that, Hokage. Not with my daughter on that team. Relax, Hiashi. Sasuke isn't in any shape to take the exams. This is still Squad 7 though, and Sai and Sakura have already completed the exam. So the only other genin on Squad 7 has to be on the sign-up form. Sasuke is the only choice I can make. She stated, trying to reason with him. Naruto would have given me a lot of trouble if I removed Sasuke from the team officially. So he'll just be on the paper as part of the team, not actual participating. She said. Naruto was standing just outside Ichiraku's ramen stand after using the yellow flash jutsu with a very shocked and speechless Hanabi Hyuga. Everyone seemed to be staring at them. Especially Guy Sensei and Rock Lee. Naruto's mental checklist. Okay, I'm standing out in the open with one arm around a very cute younger girl's neck and the other wrapped around her waist. Check, that looks bad. I'm holding a kunai in a menacing type manner in front of her. Check, that looks even worse. There are rumors going around about me being a playboy. Sigh, check. She's total speechless and shocked at the moment. Oh, big check, that makes all the rest look even more bad. The last 2 people on the planet that I would not want to be seen like this are in front of me. Sigh, check again. Conclusion. Oh shit, this isn't gonna end well. Guy finally came out of his shock and took a slow, timid step back. Then, faster than Naruto thought was humanly possible, he turned around and ran away, leaving a huge dust trail behind him, yelling in a pleading voice at the top of his lungs, Hokage. Lee's shocked look quickly turned to anger, then to resolve before saying, Naruto, you really have turned into a playboy. First Ino, then Hinata, then Sakura-chan, and now you're trying to molest this little girl. He said dramatically. I may die trying to stop you for the error of your ways, but I can't let you do this. He said, sounding like a total drama queen. Oh shit, was all Naruto could think as Rock Lee charged. Dot. Dot. End of chapter 1. Will Naruto survive Rock Lee's assault? Will he make it to the restaurant before those free tickets expire? And what will happen when Guy Sensei tells the Hokage about how Naruto looked like he was assaulting Hanabi Hyuga? That and much more is in the next chapter, Getting to Know Each Other. Dot. It will probably be a few weeks before I get the next chapter out. I've already got about 1,000 words written. It only takes me about 10 hours to do a chapter, but my grammar and sentence structure is so bad it take me and my wife like 3 times that amount of time to make it readable law. That and I've have to research the jutsu names to make sure they're right. Dot. Dot. Naruto was standing just outside Ichiraku's ramen stand after using the yellow flash jutsu with a very shocked and speechless Hanabi Hyuga. Everyone seemed to be starting at them. Especially Guy Sensei and Rock Lee. Dot. Naruto's mental checklist. Okay, I'm standing out in the open with one arm around a very cute younger girl's neck and the other wrapped around her waist. Check, that looks bad. I'm holding a kunai in a menacing type manner in front of her. Check, that looks even worse. There are rumors going around about me being a playboy. Sigh, check. She total speechless and shocked at the moment. Check, that makes all the rest look even worse. The last 2 people on the planet that I would not want to be seen like this are here. Big check there. Conclusion. Oh shit, this isn't going end well. Dot. Guy finally came out of his shock and took a slow timid step back, then faster than Naruto thought was humanly possible he turned around and ran away, leaving a huge dust trail behind him, yelling in a pleading voice at the top of his lungs. Hokage. Dot. Lee's shocked look quickly turned to anger, then to resolve before saying, Naruto, you really have turned into a playboy. First Ino, then Hinata, then Sakura-chan, and now you're trying to molest this little girl. He said dramatically. I may die trying to stop you for the error of your ways, but I can't let you do this. He said like a total drama queen. Oh shit, was all Naruto could think as Rock Lee charged him. Dot. Chapter 2. Getting to Know Each Other. Dot. Naruto was trying to disperse his sage chakra so that when Lee hit him it wouldn't reflect the damage and add even more of it back at him. The sage did the only thing he could do. He quickly turned around while holding her so Rock Lee's assault wouldn't hit Hanabi and waited for Lee's to start beating on him. Just as Lee was about to send Naruto flying with a charging jump kick is when a very outraged Hanabi regained her thoughts. She grabbed Naruto by his trench coat and slammed him up against a nearby wall. You kissed the Hokage, she screamed. Dot. Rock Lee flew right by them at an amazing speed and crashed into a thick wall with his flying kick leading the way. He crumbed the wall right on top of himself. Naruto blinked a few times before forgetting about Lee and said, yeah, so what? He asked in a confused manner. The young Hyuga yelled, You kissed the Hokage. How could you kiss her? She's 3 times your age. That's Sui Wweee. She said, grossing herself out with a mental picture of Naruto and the Hokage together intimately. Dot. Naruto blinked a few times, clearly not sure why she was making a big deal out of this before finally telling her flatly. She's like the mother I never had, of course I love her. What's wrong with giving someone you love like family a kiss on the cheek? Is the Hyuga family so cold to each other that you show no signs of affection toward each other at all? Dot. Lee had just picked himself up out of the wall he smashed and was totally confused as he dizzily swayed back and forth. Wow, Naruto's victim is yelling at him for kissing another woman, and the Hokage at that, but it was just on the cheek and he said she was like a mother to him. Well, there is nothing wrong with kissing a mother figure on the cheek, but his victim, that he seemed about to molest, is chewing him out and he is not smacking her around or anything. Lee was lost in his thoughts for some time. Dot. Hanabi was shocked again, but this time she blushed a dark shade red when she realized her mistake and the relationship between Naruto and the Hokage wasn't of the intimate type. Dot. Oh crap, when did I become a pervert? I'm getting just like Hinata. How could I have even thought of that? It was just a kiss on the cheek. I've totally blown this out of proportion. I'm the Hyuga heiress. I have to keep up the most noble of images. She thought nervously. She then looked around at all the people that had stopped dead in the tracks staring at the two ninjas. She panicked. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Not good, not good. Father's going kill me for tarnishing the Hyuga name. Naruto's stomach growled loudly, breaking her out of her panic attack. Look Hanabi, let me explain the situation to you. Rock Lee is distracted for a minute. Guy Sensei is off to get the Hokage for Kami only knows what reason, and I'm freaking starved. We are leaving if I have to carry you. Got it, he stated as he grabbed her wrist and led her down the street. She blinked, then nodded her head unknowingly. They were a few blocks away before she realized what was going on. Where are you taking me? She squeaked in a very high voice when she came back from her latest episode of being shocked. She was drawing up images of Naruto dragging her off into the woods to do unspeakable things to her. Naruto actually let go of her and covered his ears, thinking he was being attacked by a sound ninja attack. Ouch, what was that for? Are you trying to attack my sense of hearing? The sage said while peering over at her. He said while digging in his pocket to retrieve the free meal tickets from Tsunade. He procured them, pulling them out of his pocket, and stared at them for a moment. We are going to the Bounty Earth and Sea. It looks like a sushi and steak house. We're almost there and I'm starving. He reiterated. The sage grabbed her wrist again and led her down the street. They finally made it to the restaurant and Hanabi was finally not so shocked at everything Naruto did. They both stepped inside the mid-sized establishment. All the tables were made of a black wood and trimmed in a gold-looking metal. On the walls were mostly giant fans that were black with golden flowers on it. The fireplace mantle was covered in purple velvet with a small 8 feet 10 picture of each of the Hokages from 1st to 5th, and there was a blank frame at the end. The place seemed fairly dim compared to the outside sunny day. The place wasn't very busy. Out of the 20 or so tables there wasn't but about 5 that had people at them. The only people she did recognize were high-ranking officials. This was probably a rather expensive place to get lunch, she decided. A small dark-haired young woman in a tightly wrapped kimono that decorated was just like the rest of the restaurant, black with gold flowers, came up to the couple. How many are in your party? She asked with her eyes squinted, and she gave them a short bowing. Naruto said. 2. Here is our tickets from the Hokage. He held out the VIP tickets. The hostess got up from her bow and finally opened her eyes to see who she was seating. Her fake smile turned into a real one as she looked at Naruto, eyeing him up and down. She took the tickets, barely looking at them, and led them to a door at the back and opened it. Please sit wherever you like. She beamed while leading them into the private room. Inside was a huge oval oak table with 14 cushy black leather chairs. Hanabi guessed it was set up so the council could come and eat while discussing business. Naruto went to the middle of the table and sat down, and the hostess put a menu in front of him. Hanabi realized she was being rude standing at the door and took the seat on the opposite side of the table from Naruto. The hostess placed a menu in front of her. I'll be back in a few minutes for your orders, she said while never taking her eyes off Naruto or removing her smile. The hostess quietly closed the door behind her. Naruto went over the fancy menu a few times and still didn't know what the heck any of it meant or what the place even served. Why do they have to use such formal names for everything? I can barely understand any of it, he thought. Which one of these is ramen, damn it? After a few seconds of looking at the menu, Hanabi had decided on the seaweed fried rice with greens and shrimp. She also decided that she wanted the honey-glazed swallow's nest with vanilla ice cream for dessert. Naruto looked at the menu again and again and still didn't understand what to order or what the hell it was that he was ordering, if he did order anything. Hanabi, who was used to eating at upscale restaurants all the time, could tell Naruto was totally out of his element. She smiled, thinking, he, the so-called hero of the town being whipped by a menu. It's so laughable, but we are going to be teammates, and as much as I hate to admit it, he is kinda Cute. Hinata, get out of my head. She mentally screamed with frustration. After 3 minutes of staring at the menu, Naruto finally gave up on it and promptly got up and walked over the top of the table. He plopped down in the chair right next to Hanabi. He scooted his chair right up to her so their elbows were touching. Hey Hanabi-chan, what is all this stuff on the menu? I've never heard of any of it. Naruto said, clearly confused while pointing at the menu. She went a dark shade of pink. Damn, there he goes again, invading my personal space. No wonder Sakura was always punching him. She was probably just trying to get him out of her personal space, and why the heck is he calling me Chan? We practically just meet, for crying out loud. Naruto put his hand on her forehead and put the back of his other hand on his forehead while still holding the menu. Hanabi-chan, you look flushed. Are you feeling okay? He said out of concern. Hanabi mentally cursed herself. I've got to stop spacing out. You don't seem to have a fever. He said with a concerned look on his face. I'm fine, it's just a bit warm in here. She said shyly, trying to get her air of nobility back. I guess it is a bit warm in here. Naruto said as he nodded in agreement. He reached into his pouch and pulled out a small stone. He held it in the palm of his open hand with his arm fully extended and charged it with chakra. Then he formed 4 air blades and turned them slightly at an angle. The blades started to spin at a quick pace. He stood up and held the strange jutsu over them and let it go. It stayed in the air right where he left it. Naruto then sat back down like nothing had happened and looked over at Hanabi, who was noticeably uncomfortable. She stared at the strange jutsu slightly fearful manner. She didn't know many ninja that could produce chakra so dense that it was visible, but she did know all the jutsu she had seen, like it was highly dangerous. What's wrong now? He asked while scrunching his eyebrows together. You don't feel better? She finally stopped staring at the wind-bladed rock and looked over at him. Is that thing safe? She asked, a bit strained as she pointed to it. He looked at her for a long moment, slightly confused. Well, don't go sticking your fingers in it, and it is, he stated. She went back to looking at it and noticed there was a nice breeze coming from it, blowing down on the two of them. Oh, I get it. It's a fan. That's kinda of sweet. Wait, what am I saying? Who the hell in their right mind makes a fan like that? I swear if he doesn't kill me with one of his jutsus, I'll end up dying from a heart attack from his shocking personality. Naruto was looking at Hanabi with a very serious look on his face when she came back from her inner thoughts. Hanabi-chan, I've got one important question for you. He held up his menu in front of him while taping his finger on it with a very serious look on his face and said, which one of these is ramen? His eyes were very intense. Hanabi blinked a few times, processing the odd request. She looked over the menu, and then looked at Naruto, then back over the menu, then back to Naruto before saying, there is no ramen on the menu, she stated. Naruto's eyes went wide and he had a look on his face like someone died. Guy-sensei burst right through the door to the Hokage's office without opening it. Hokage-sama, he yelled, skidding to a halt right in front of the desk as the debris from the door showered Tsunade's office. Tsunade covered her face when she heard the crash, like this had happened many times before. Hiashi jumped into full defensive taijutsu form and Kakashi ducked behind the Hokage at the sound of the thunderous crash. Hokage-sama, he yelled as he panted and held the stitch in his side. The Hokage rolled her eyes as she lowered her arm. What is it this time, Guy? She obviously wasn't happy and sounded a bit annoyed with him. He huffed a few times to catch his breath and then inhaled sharply. It's Naruto. He looks like he's kidnapped some poor Hyuga girl and is planning on doing all sorts of lewd things to her. He had her at knife point and the poor girl was in such shock and horror. He said, using over-exaggerated hand and arm movements to the point of being silly to emphasize his point. You've gotta do something. My Lee is out there trying to stop him now. You know he doesn't stand a chance if Naruto gets serious. He begged her and continued on, but was talking so fast no one understood any of it. After he finally ran out of breath and started panting. The Hokage rolled her eyes at the hyperactive Jonin and sighed. She reached on top of a pile of paperwork and retrieved a folder. She opened it and pulled out a photo. Is this the girl? She asked, slightly annoyed and tired of everything while holding the photo of Hanabi Hyuga. Yes. Hokage-sama, that's the cut. He just noticed the Hyuga clan leader in the room simmering with rage and hanging on every word he said. Young woman. He corrected himself mid-sentence, suddenly very self-conscious of the situation. The Hokage's head had a vein starting to bulge in her forehead. Did you see any of these so-called lewd acts that you're speaking of? She said accusingly. Guy was suddenly on the defensive with his open hands shaking back and forth in front of him. Well, not exactly, but I could see it in his beady eyes. He said, half crouching, pointing at his eyes as he shifted them to and fro suspiciously. The vein in Tsunade's head bulged even bigger. She started to speak slowly through clenched jaw. So you're telling me you just ran here leaving your student Rock Lee to fight Naruto because of something you thought might be going on and didn't bother to confirm it? She spat like she was spewing venom. Guy-sensei was backpedaling from the Hokage's killing intent. Well, you see, Naruto, I mean, you know recently has gotten, to be rather a playboy so to speak, so I just assumed. He said fearfully. The Hokage snapped and grabbed the first object she could get her hands on. Which, unlucky for Guy, happened to be a 3-pound brass paperweight name plate from the front of her desk that had the name, Hokage Tsunade, deeply engraved on it. She hurled the name plate at near supersonic speeds, hitting Guy-sensei in the gut, sending him flying out of her office door. Erghh, the nerve of him. She said, enraged as she angrily collapsed back down into her chair, rubbing her aching head. After a few long and uncomfortable moments for both Hiashi and Kakashi, she sighed in defeat and said, Kakashi, if I retire as Hokage, will you take the job? She asked. Kakashi froze as the images of himself getting challenged to a duel of strength by Naruto popped into his head. He suddenly sweat dropped and poofed into smoke as a single piece of paper slowly wafted over to her desk, landing right in front of her. She took her head out of her hands and picked it up. Out of body, back in an hour, was all the note said. She mumbled to herself. Chicken. Hiashi wanted to leave right at the moment Guy-sensei had said Naruto was putting the moves on his daughter, but being a clan head had its downsides too. Like always, being respectful to those in higher standings in the council. If you would excuse me, Hokage-sama. He bowed respectfully and quickly headed for the door. Aishi. Tsunade warned him as he turned around, clearly angry she has stopped him. He stood still and waited for her to speak. You don't actually think I'm going let you crash their time to get acquainted, do you? She said as a warning, with her usual fake smile that he knew was a warning. Hiashi knew he didn't have much wiggle room in the matter. He then smiled back at her. If I can't force my way there, I'll entice her there. He suddenly and without warning he said. Drinks are on me. Tsunade thought as she grinned. That's the only reason I go there, the food is horrible. There is only like 3 things on the whole menu that I'd ever eat again willingly. That's why I gave the tickets to Naruto in the first place. He'll eat anything. The hostess came in with bread and some strange oil in a small dish. She set the items down near them and asked politely. Are you ready to order yet? Hanabi respectfully said. Yes, I'll have number 14 and he would like a number 7 please. The hostess eyed Hanabi for a second. It wasn't normal for the woman to order for herself and her man. Sure, and what would you like to drink? She said with her professional smile back in place. Hanabi said, I'll have the aged grape juice. She looked over at Naruto. She obviously didn't know what we drank. Naruto got the message. I'll just have whatever tea you think is good, but please, no green tea. He said with his cheery smile. The hostess took the menus and left promptly. Hanabi noticed that she wasn't making eyes at Naruto this time. She must have noticed his fan jutsu. She thought with a grin. Wow, she didn't freak about my rock wind blade jutsu. I wonder if she's really a civilian. He thought. He then eyed Hanabi carefully and said, aged grape juice. Did you just order alcohol? Well, yes, but it's very weak. She said, eyeing him slightly confused. You really don't know much about the noble family and how we live, do you? She asked, already knowing the answer. Naruto looked at her carefully for a moment. What do you mean? I know about the Hyuga gentle fist technique and your training ground and. She cut him off. It's got nothing to do with being a ninja or jutsu, Naruto. She stated, almost like she was talking down to him. Grr, he really is a moron. I guess I'll have to explain it to him. She sighed. Well, imagine she was cut off by an all too familiar voice at the door. Imagine you're the host of a party for nobles. Lord Hyuga said from the doorway. You will be expected to partake in the pleasantries and drink while performing business to a small degree. One of the easiest and simplest ways to get someone more susceptible to an idea which they would otherwise be opposed is to get them drunk. Since you are the host of the party, you are expected to drink first, and among the ninja houses this is a sign of good faith. You see, all the most important members of the party will share the first drink from the same bottle, and the host drinks first as a sign of good faith that the drink is not poisoned. After a long party, you will be expected to partake in several toasts during such a party and could easily be quite inebriated. That is when you could easily promise something you would otherwise vehemently oppose. That is why it is important that you be able to hold your alcohol during a gathering. So most of the main branches of the families are required to drink alcohol to build up their tolerance to the drinking. Hiyashi stated. Hiyashi had taken a look around the would-be council dinner table to see it a total mess of scrolls all over most of it. The majority was covered in teamwork tactics and most of the rest was jutsu scrolls. The only food on the huge table was some bread and a saucer of oil that probably wasn't very good, as only one piece of bread had a bite out of it on the plate and the rest was untouched. Naruto must have been going over tactics and jutsu with her before we arrived. What a relief, he thought as he relaxed. Hello, Hiyashi-sama, he said with a cheerfully smile while waving over the mounds of scrolls. It still feels weird, though I am 28 years his senior. Having someone that can level a mountain call me master makes me feels out of place any way I look at it. Even if I am a clan head. Hiyashi thought. Hello, Sage Naruto, he said calmly to what most would see, but Hanabi saw he was relieved. Hiyashi walked in and took a seat next to Hanabi, followed by an overly happy Tsunade. How are things going, you two? Tsunade, she said while wiping a place clear of scrolls next to Hiyashi. The hostess came in with 2 more menus and said, it is an honor that you grace us with your presence, Hokage-sama and Lord Hyuga. Can I get you anything to drink? Tsunade smiled mischievously. A bottle of white light gold and 2 drinking cups, please. Hiyashi just realized what she ordered and it wasn't good. White light was 197 proof. Oh crap. I thought she'd order high-grade sake, not that stuff. It is not even recommended for human consumption and it is used mostly to make high-grade fire bombs. Oh Kami, did she say 2 drinking cups? He panicked and started sweating. The Hyuga had a feeling that he was going to give Naruto a first-hand showing on that lesson he just taught him. Hey there, what brings you two over? Naruto asked over a scroll he was showing Hanabi in his hands. She eyed him carefully before speaking. Well, Guy-sensei convinced Hiyashi and I that we should come here for lunch. She smiled. Naruto looked up from his scroll and rolled his eyes. He knew quite well what Guy probably said to them to come and check up on him. Hanabi, who just bowed her head slightly when both of them came in, and directed Naruto's attention back to the scroll he was holding and asked. So what is the point of this 3-prong formation attack if we only have 2 members, and why would you put me at the head of the arrow? Shouldn't that be where the strongest ninja of the 3 should be? She questioned. Hiyashi eyed the young sage. My girl has a valid point there. Oh no, here comes that waiter holding my doom in her hands. The Hyuga lord was getting nervous enough for Hanabi to notice if she was paying attention. The hostess came back with a 20-ounce clear bottle with a golden sun symbol on the front of it and set it in 2 drinking cups in front of her and Hiyashi. Thank you, the Hokage said with a smile. Naruto waited for the hostess to leave before answering Hanabi. Well, for a 3-prong arrow attack you're right, but this one's a feint. If you look farther down the scroll you'll see that the ninja in the center runs slower than the 2 on the sides. The ninja in the center gets the enemy to focus on him and then lets the other 2 ninja overtake him in the charge. Now on a non-ninja enemy the center might actually be more dangerous. But on a ninja he will realize this a turn to defend himself from the 2 side ninjas, leaving an opening for the ninja in the center to attack. Do you see now? He asked. Hanabi looked at him carefully while squinting and said, that still doesn't explain how we will use this with only 2 people in our squad. She eyed him critically. Naruto laughed. And here I thought you might have had that figured out from peeping on me in Konohamaru training. He said while still laughing. Hanabi thought. Kami, how did he know I was watching him? Maybe that's why I didn't see any of his powerful jutsu. It was because he knew I was there. It's possible. He did know me and father were outside the Hokage's door after all. She was only slightly embarrassed this time. At least I'm getting better and not being totally shocked, but still. She thought with only a hint of pink in her cheeks. Tsunade smiled. I'm glad he has been working on his main weakness. His slow mind has been getting a lot sharper over the years. In some ways he's becoming a lot more like those stories of wise old sages, but enough of those thoughts. It is time to torture Hiyashi for not believing me about his daughter being fine with Naruto. Tsunade grabbed the bottle of white light and poured a shot for her and Hiyashi. Drink up, she said with a friendly smile as she downed the shot. Hiyashi was eyeing the clear liquid in his cup with a mental battle raging in his head. Oh Kami, I hope everything I have heard about drinking this stuff was over-exaggerated. He picked his cup up and smelled the liquid. No smell, maybe it was just exaggerated. He shrugged slightly and downed the shot. Fire like he'd never felt in his life before raced down to his throat and turned his stomach into an inferno. Oh Kami, it hurt. So bad. Outwardly Hiyashi held on to his composure well. He was perfectly still, but to the trained eyes of Tsunade she could see him ever so slightly trembling and a tear forming in the corner of his eye. Tsunade poked him in the shoulder to get his attention. Hey slacker, come on, you're already 2 shots behind. Come on, this bottle isn't going to empty itself and half of it you're going to be drinking half of it. She said to let him know it was an order not a request as she was shaking the bottle back and forth in front of him. The Hyuga sighed in defeat, steeling himself for death by alcohol poisoning. Kami, please take me quickly. Is my will in order? I think it is. It might not be. What will be on my tombstone? He thought. Here lies Hiyashi Hyuga, the fool that tried to drink with the 5th Hokage. Hiyashi. Tsunade warned none to subtlety. Hiyashi gulped and lifted the cup to his lips to double the inferno in his stomach. He managed to hold another 2 shots before fainting. How unlucky for him that Tsunade was a medical ninja that healed him just enough to revive him. Erg. Hiyashi groaned as Tsunade sat him up from the floor. My body's on fire, but that breeze is nice. He said, clearly not all there yet. Breeze, she said, just now noticing. She looked up to see what looked like a mini Rasenshuriken. Her eyes narrowed to a scowl as she dropped Hiyashi with a sudden thud back on the ground. Naruto and Hanabi had been going over scrolls oblivious to Tsunade's torture of the Hyuga Lord. Naruto, she yelled. Naruto jumped and looked over at her as the pebble lost its wind blades and fell right into the cup of oil for the bread with a splash. What the hell is that? It looks like the blades of the Rasenshuriken. She yelled so loudly the building shook. I told you that you are never to teach that jutsu to anyone. Especially Konohamaru. I made it a SS raked forbidden jutsu for a reason. You damned wart sage. She grabbed Naruto and had him pinned on the table with one hand on the front of his shirt holding him down, and the other ed ready to send him to hell and 6 feet under the ground at the same time. Tsunade-chan, he said nervously. It is not what you think. He pleaded. She scowled at him. You have 5 seconds to explain before I send you to Kami. She warned. Hanabi was hot, so I adapted the blades of the Rasenshuriken into a fan to keep her cool. Honestly, I wasn't planning on teaching Konohamaru that jutsu. I know it would kill him from the backfire damage until he learned to throw it. He said, slowly opening his eyes from the squint he was wearing to see if he was still alive. Tsunade felt slightly embarrassed and let go of her killing intent. Said, "Oh, I guess that was kinda of sweet. I guess. In a Naruto type of way. Oh, thank Kami. If she had been sober, that would have never worked, and I didn't want to use the other method to calm her down with Hanabi here. She would totally have taken it the wrong way." He thought, clearly relieved. Hanabi was a statue. She was so shocked. She had always looked up to Tsunade as a strong, conservative woman, but seeing her squatting over her unconscious father in a very unladylike manner, she was forced to think of the Hokage as a drunken brute. Hiashi was on death's door. Oh, there, light at the end of a tunnel, beautiful white light, he said as he gripped at the empty air while laying on his back. Tsunade scowled. Oh no, you don't. She grinned wickedly. I'm not letting you die yet. There is still over half the bottle left. Just then the hostess came in with the 2 steaming plates of food Naruto and Hanabi ordered. Her eyes still squinted like before. Naruto made a crossed finger hand seal and said, "Scroll library seal." All that was left on the previously mess of a table was a single 10-inch long scroll that was 2 inches thick, the bread, oil, the bottle and cups. Naruto thought that Hanabi had seen enough of the things here. He didn't want her to be a human statue. Though this was kind of normal for him hanging out with Tsunade, he knew others didn't understand and would freeze up and not speak for some time afterwards, as the Hokage could be rather intense when she let her true personality hang out. "Tsunade-chan, your food's here," he said loudly. He then walked over to the hostess quietly and whispered, "Please send this message to Sakura at the hospital. Tsunade has done it again. Come to the bounty of the earth and see and save the poor guy." He asked quietly as he could. Naruto thought, okay, I've taken care of Lord Hyuga. Now it's time to get Hanabi out of here and get some real food. I'm so hungry, but she's been around me for a while now and isn't getting shocked so much anymore. I have to have her perfectly still to use the yellow flash jutsu to get us out of here. The young sage thought. I really hope she doesn't hate me long for this, but it's kind of my only ace in the hole for shocking her without fail. Naruto sneaked back over to the Hyuga heiress and whispered softly in her ear. I'm so sorry. Naruto gently grabbed her wrist, leading her out of her chair ever so smoothly. Then he pulled her wrists over her head and gently pinned her to the table. His eyes went from brilliant blue to crimson red with slits for pupils. He kissed her softly twice on the neck. Now you're mine, he whispered in a dark and sinister voice that was not his own into her ear. She totally froze. Yes, I knew it would work. I just hope she forgives me later for scaring her, he thought. He quickly reached into his pouch and pulled out a rune-covered kunai, and they both disappeared as he used his yellow flash jutsu, leaving Hiashi at Tsunade's mercy. Rock Lee was finally coming to the conclusion maybe Naruto wasn't trying to hurt that cute girl and was just about to leave when he had a total deja vu. Naruto was again standing in the exact same place with the exact same cute girl wearing the exact same horrified expression. Rock Lee's mind started racing. I must fight my urge to engage him in combat for this. It's probably a misunderstanding. Naruto would never hurt a leaf shinobi. Okay, calm down. Think of something total random. He drew up a picture of a bass drum lying on the ground. Okay, he thought. On the bass drum, written in green paint, was the words, I hate pickles. Okay, that's definitely weird. This should really help me take my mind off Naruto and that girl. The image grew. Then Kakashi was sitting on the drum holding a pickle. He then flipped the pickle over in his hand like it was a kunai and stabbed it into the side of the drum with a low squish sound. Is it just me or is it getting a little too weird in my head? Kakashi then pulled out another much larger pickle almost a foot long and looked over at Lee. Lee, he said in a ghostly voice. Yup, it's getting too weird when your own images are trying to talk to you. Rock Lee thought. Lee, I've devised a new version of the 10,000 years of pain jutsu and I'm going to test it out on you. Lee, the ghostly Kakashi said as he pointed the pickle at Rock Lee. Rock Lee mentally froze. He had nearly shocked himself to death. Back in the real world, Rock Lee suddenly fainted, collapsing into a heap. Not long after that, Guy Sensei charged up with his normal huge dust trail. Lee, we have got to go. The Hokage is pissed at us and put us on shit detail. He said it so fast he sounding like a squeaking rat on an adrenaline rush. He grabbed the unconscious Lee and charged off into the distance. When the young man finally came to, he screamed at the top of his lungs, Kami no. Please no pickles. Guy started and looked over at Lee, who was propped up in a corner of a filthy public bathroom. Pickles? Guy Sensei asked questionably. The only pickles you'll find here is the one we are in, my boy. He gave Lee the two thumbs up and his normally bright smile, but it looked like he had a brown clump of something stuck to his teeth. Lee looked around at his surroundings. This had to be the dirtiest bathroom he'd ever seen. Guy Sensei was on the other side of the room with a toothbrush in hand covered in filth while looking at Lee. Behind him was a small 3-foot section of the floor that was sparkling clean. Guy Sensei tossed him a toothbrush. It seems the Hokage has given us a new training regimen. We are going to clean all 42 public bathrooms with toothbrushes. He thought. What could the Hokage be training us in, ninjutsu? No, that couldn't be it. Stamina, maybe, but I don't think so at our level. Chakra control, definitely not. You know, this seems a lot like. We are on shit detail, aren't we, Sensei? He finally asked. Guy suddenly faltered with slumped shoulders. Yes, Lee, it seems our sense of justice got the better of us again. It turns out that that girl Naruto was with is actually his new teammate for the Chunin exams, and that not the worst of it. She actually Hanabi Hyuga, he said. Lee looked at him questioningly before asking. Hinata's younger sister. I've only seen her a few times at big social events, but I've never spoke to her. He said curiously. Guy Sensei spoke. This floor isn't going clean itself, Lee. Get to scrubbing. He eyed him sternly. Lee quickly got on his knees and started scrubbing. Guy began again. No, you wouldn't have. She is the Hyuga clan heir. Lee looked puzzled for a moment. I thought that always went to the eldest child. He said. Guy was still scrubbing a particularly stubborn stain between the titles. Yes. Normally it does, but the Hyuga lord decided Hanabi was more fit for it. Hence why we are scrubbing crap-stained floors for the next 2 days for interfering with them. He stated. Lee grimace. 2 days. Naruto was standing outside Ichiraku's ramen with a very beautiful and very shocked Hanabi in his arms. He thought. Wow, she smells nice. Why didn't I notice that last time? She smells like honey and cherry blossoms with a hint of grass clippings. Haha, maybe my hunger is getting the better of me. Just the smell of honey is getting me in a longing mood for food. Hanabi-chan, he said as he removed his arms from around her, but held onto her wrist. He reached over with his left hand to poke her in the ribs a few times. Hanabi-chan, he yelled rather loudly. Hanabi finally snapped out of it. Oh Kami, what was that? Genjutsu. It was so scary. The way his eyes turned red and that voice with so much killing intent. It was stifling. Wait, we are back at the ramen stand. I hope he doesn't think I'm eating at this dump. She thought in dismay. Naruto dragged Hanabi over to a stool at the bar and said. Come on, this is my favorite places in the world to eat. You're going to love it. Hanabi wasn't happy about this, but put on a smile as she was expected. Yo Tsuki, 2 bowls of miso ramen for me. What would you like, Hanabi-chan? He asked with his arm up. She took a long time to look over the menu. I'm probably going to regret this, but this ramen doesn't sound too bad. She thought. I'll have the duck ramen please. She said in a reserved manner. Right away. Tsuki replied with a smile. They were both sitting there perfectly quiet for a while, which was very uncommon for Naruto. Naruto finally turned toward Hanabi and said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you back there with that jutsu. He said earnestly and a bit sadly. I probably scared the poor girl half to death. What was I thinking? I'm such an idiot bringing out some of Kyuubi's chakra for that. What if she finds out before I'm ready for her to know? What if she acts like the way the villagers used to treat me? Like I'm some kind of monster. I'll definitely have to be more careful. She's not Sakura-chan who knows the full extent of what I am and what I can really do. He thought sadly. Hanabi blinked a few times. She was caught a bit off guard the way he suddenly broke the long silence before asking. Which one would that be? The one where you invaded my personal space by snuggling up to me like some kind of pervert blinking me across town. She eyed him critically. The one where you made a fan out of chakra so dense it was visible just to make a breeze. Or the one where your eyes turned red and you made me think you were going to kill me on the spot. She finished, still eyeing him. Naruto was wearing a look that could only say, oops. He thought for a moment before saying, I guess for the 2 yellow flashes, the pervert snuggle as you called it, and the red eyes one. He said with his usual smile while rubbing the back of his head innocently. Oh, she said with a slight lift and dip of her head. Wait, did you say yellow flash? The same yellow flash as the 4th Hokage's. Isn't that time-space ninjutsu that takes an incredible amount of chakra and control to perform? No way will I believe this knucklehead can do jutsu of that caliber. She thought as her eyes narrowed at him. Naruto eyed her expression of disbelief for a moment before giving her a small poke in the center of her forehead and said, Yes. Order up, Naruto. The ramen master said as he placed 2 bowls in front of Naruto and another in front of Hanabi. Great. Naruto said as he broke his chopsticks apart while shouting. Itadakimasu. He started inhaling his food. Hanabi watched the sage in horror. Good lord, how can anyone stand to be near him with the way he eats? He's got no manners at all. She thought as she watched him pull up another bundle of noodles and blowing on them a few times before cramming them into his mouth. Naruto gave her a sideways glance, noticing her slighted look. He finished his bite of food before leaning over near her ear and said, You are being rude to the ramen master, at least try your food. He whispered with force. Wait a minute, he's slurping his food and I'm being rude. The nerve of this guy. Sigh, I guess I'll try this low-brow food. I wouldn't want to be rude. She thought, dripping with sarcasm as she eyed him. She picked up her chopsticks and broke them apart before bowing slightly over her bowl and said, Itadakimasu. She grabbed up some noodles and blew on them softly a few times before tasting them. Kind of salty, but the noodles are so weird. They are thick, but still soft all the way though, and the onions and garlic in the broth really complement the duck's flavor well. It doesn't taste gamely at all. This is actually pretty good. She thought as she bit the noodles off in her mouth. Naruto laughed. You know that's not how you're supposed to eat ramen. You're supposed to slurp the noodles up into your mouth. Not bite them off. He stated with a smile that was obviously trying to hold back a chuckle. She sighed. You know it's not ladylike or noble to slurp your food, Naruto. Even you should know that. She stated like he was a child. Naruto smiled. You're a lot more gutsy than Hinata. I'll give you that, but you're still going to get outranked just like she did on this matter. He stated in a matter-of-fact attitude. I'd forgotten that he dated my older sister over a year ago, even still there's no other noble here. How could I get outranked unless he is going to try to say his sage title outranks me when we are both genin? She thought as she smirked at him confidently. Let me ask you something, Hanabi. When you spar with your father, who is the master, you or your father? He asked while slurping another mouthful of ramen. She looked at him, not really knowing what he was getting at before stating. My father is the master, of course. He looked at her carefully before saying his next words. So when you sit at a ramen stand, who is the master, you or the chef? He smiled. She smiled right back at him and said, I am, because I am the customer and I have the money. Naruto grinned back playfully before saying, so you think money can buy personal skills? No, but it can hire that skill, and why should I learn a skill when I can hire another that already has such a skill? She stated. Naruto was still smiling. So you, by hiring him, are admitting that the person you hired is the master and you are not at that skill. You're sitting at a ramen stand arguing over this manner. By paying for your ramen, you have admitted that he is the master ramen maker and you are not. He stated. He turned to Tuki, who had heard the whole conversation. Hey Tuki, how are you supposed to eat ramen? Slurp it or bite it off? He asked. The ramen master never looked up from his work before stating. Any 5-year-old knows you slurp hot ramen to cool it off while eating it. She sighed in defeat. It's okay. He has a point, and I knew he was baiting me the whole time, but I wasn't expecting him to have such a meaningful ramen speech set up. Cammy, he is weird. She thought, then sighed. I guess you're right. I don't know the first thing about making ramen, she said as she rolled her eyes. But it's not like ramen is going to save the town though if we are attacked. His face suddenly relaxed from its smile and his thoughts seemed far away, like remembering a long-lost memory. What if I told you that a bowl of ramen is the reason that this village was saved more than once? He said, looking farther off than the back of the ramen shop. Hanabi chuckled. Then I'd say I'm not that gullible, Wart Sage. She said playfully, remembering what the Hokage called him when she was in an uproar. He raised his eyebrows while looking down, nodding his head solemnly. I guess you're right. It was a silly story anyway. There was an awkward silence that hung between them for a long moment before Naruto spoke. Well, I think I need to get back to training, he said, replacing his look with his normal cheery smile. It has been a while, but I think I should go see the king first, he said as he stretched as he got up from his bar stool. Wait, hold it. What king? We aren't a monarchy. We don't have a king. What the heck is he talking about? She thought in confusion. Naruto left some money on the counter and started to walk away before turning back around saying, I'll be at the training grounds in an hour and I hope you're not going to be hiding this time because I've got something to give you, he said, and then leapt away. His face suddenly relaxed from its smile and his thoughts seemed farther away, like he was remembering a long-lost memory. What if I told you that a bowl of ramen is the reason that this village was saved more than once? He said, looking farther off than the back of the ramen shop. Hanabi chuckled. Then I'd say I'm not that gullible, Wart Sage. She said playfully, remembering what the Hokage called him when she was in an uproar. He raised his eyebrows while looking down, nodding his head. I guess you're right, it was a silly story anyway. There was an awkward silence that hung between them for a long moment before Naruto spoke. Well, I think I need to get back to training, he said, replacing his look with his normal cheery smile. It's been a while, but I think I should go see the king first, he said. Wait, hold it. What king? We aren't a monarchy. We don't have a king. What the hell is he talking about? She thought. Naruto left some money on the counter and started to walk away before turning back around saying, I'll be at the training ground in an hour and I hope you're not going to be hiding this time because I've got something to give you, he said with a smile. He then leapt away. Chapter 3. Training with the Sage. Hanabi was confused. Who's the king? What could that crackpot have to give me? Most importantly, I think he wasn't just messing around about that bowl of ramen saving the village. What am I saying? But he did seem more serious than he had been all day. The way he acted when I called him Wart Sage. He seemed shattered for a moment, then he left. Oh Cammy, I think I might have messed up. I should follow him. At least I can find out who this so-called king is. She thought. Here is the money for my meal, she said as she put the money down before leaping off after Naruto. Hey wait, Tuki said. This is way too much, besides Naruto already paid for both of you. Oh well, it's a girlfriend of Naruto's. She'll probably be back tomorrow. He sighed. I'll give her the change then, I guess. These kids and their disrespect for money these days, he stated as he shook his head back and forth. Hanabi was already leaping from rooftop to rooftop looking for Naruto. Byakugan, she shouted as the veins in her temples budged. She searched for a huge mountain of chakra and she found it heading toward the ninja training school. Why would this king be at a school? She thought as she raced after the sage. Nearby, a Naruto clone smiled as he watched Hanabi chase after the real Naruto. Then the clone poofed and was gone. Naruto smiled. Oh, she's following me. Haha, I guess I shouldn't, but she does need to know we will be spending time apart sometimes. I don't need her following me like a lost puppy dog all the time, even if she is my teammate. He grinned mischievously as he ducked into classroom 3A of the Ninja Academy. It was near the end of the school day and most of the ninjas in training were doing a writing assignment and didn't notice Naruto coming into the room. Naruto, remember? Oh crap, I'd forgotten to come back and check on everyone's progress for 2 weeks. I hope they aren't mad. Naruto sneaked up to Iruka-sensei's desk and quietly said, Hey, Iruka-sensei, how have they been doing with the clone jutsu? Iruka jumped and let out a small sound. All the students looked up and the chaos ensued. In a flash, Naruto was surrounded by most of the students in a giant hug and they were all talking at the same time excitedly. But Naruto couldn't understand anyone because they were all too loud. He knew what most of them wanted was either, look what I can do now, or, teach me another jutsu. Iruka got the look Naruto was giving him. He sighed. Okay Naruto, you can have the last 35 minutes of class, he said, defeated manner. The class cheered. Quite, Naruto said in a commanding voice. Then he grinned as they all went silent immediately. Okay, it's time for an ambush lesson. All the guys get over by the far wall out of sight of the door. Now all the girls stand right by door frame and I want you to tackle the next person through the door while yelling, I've got you, Sage Stalker. All the students did as they were told. The boys hid as best they could and the girls were along the wall waiting for the next person to come through the door. They didn't wait long till Hanabi tried to sneak through the door. We've got you, Sage Stalker. 12 girls yelled as they tackled the would-be stalker Hanabi as she came in. They all fell into a pile with the young Hyuga heiress on the bottom. There was a few seconds of muffled yells from Hanabi before Naruto said, Okay, good job girls. You caught my stalker. Now let her up. The sage was smiling ear to ear. Gradually, all the girls unpiled themselves off a rather put out Hanabi. Wow, Sage Naruto, that's one pretty stalker. I hope I get stalkers like that when I become a sage. A boy said. Yeah, me too, said another boy. She looks a lot like that one girl you used to date. You know, the one with the really big. He had his hands open palmed and fingers out in front of his chest about 7 inches away with his fingers making a grouping motion toward his chest. Rukian, you pervert, one of the girls shouted before hammer fisting him to the floor. Naruto was trying to hold in his laughter. I know most girls think that was perverted, but I have to admit it's hard not to notice that about her. He thought. Okay, no fighting, everyone head for the training field. I'll be there in a few minutes to train you all, but first I have to deal with my stalker. He said, trying unsuccessfully to suppress a giggle. The students filed out very happily. That's when Naruto got a good look at Hanabi. Her perfect dark brown hair was a total mess. She had a lipstick smear across her left cheek from one of the other girls and she was fuming. Naruto, she said through clenched teeth. I'm going to get you for this. Here I came to make sure I didn't upset you and you do this indignity to me. She picked herself off the floor. Oh, I see. He grinned. You just couldn't get enough of me, so you decided to stalk me and you got caught, and now you're mad at me. He teased. Hanabi had it. She charged him and tried to strike him on the left side of his face with her gentle fist. Naruto crouched slightly and dodged just enough so that her open palm shot over his left shoulder and the rest of her followed as she overshot. Naruto grabbed Hanabi's curvy hips to stop her from crashing into him. When Hanabi finally stopped herself, she was right in Naruto's face with her left eye staring right into his left eye. She realized that she felt Naruto's breath less than an inch away from her lips. Hanabi panicked. Oh god, we almost kissed. Not good, not good. I don't want him thinking I'm that kind of girl. She thought as her heart began to race. Naruto smiled at the situation and said, "Oh, trying to me now. I see." His right arm at her hips around the small of her back and pushed her right up against his chest. Two can play at that game, he said seductively while gazing deep into her eyes. His other arm started snaking it way up her spine. Naruto slowly traced the crevices of her spine till he was almost at her neck. Naruto thought, wow, she really easily turned on. I've barely touched her and her rock hard s are poking me in the chest. Oh Kami, his touch. It's setting my body on fire. I have to stop trembling. I have to push him away. She thought as her heart turned into a raging monster intent on breaking her rib cage wide open. Naruto trailed his hands across the bare skin of her neck. The result was immediate. The hair on her neck stood up on end and she suddenly sprang up, goosebumps all over her body. She was nearly panting and trying to hide it. Naruto was already breaking through her shield of nobility. The sage reached the base of her hair and gently wiggled his fingers into her thick locks of hair, ever so slightly dragging his nails against her scalp. Her trembles turned to near spasms. Oh Kami, make him stop. No, don't make him stop. My head says no, but my body keeps saying yes. This is so frustrating. She mentally warred with herself. Naruto took his painfully slow time wiggling his way through her hair until his hand was firmly supporting the back of her head. Oh crap, he's caught me. I can't turn my head or anything. Honestly though, I really can't wait for him to kiss me. Please hurry. What am I saying? I just meet the guy. But I can't help it. I hope he kisses me soon. I don't know how much long I can keep from making too much noise. She warred on. Naruto knew he was in complete control now. It was actually obvious as Hanabi had wrapped her trembling thighs around one of Naruto's legs without realizing it and was squeezing his leg rather tightly into her private area. Naruto leaned her head back and softly dragged his lips from the crook of her neck to her earlobe. She didn't shy away, she actually leaned toward him while he was doing this. He then softly dragged his lips across her left cheek down across to the edge of her mouth. He brushed his lips across hers a few times without kissing her, but he could tell she was moving her lips every time he did this, expecting it. Naruto slow dragged his lips back to her earlobe and give her a playful bite. Tell me what you want, he said in a deep seductive voice. Her thighs tightened and trembled harder in response as she bit her lip. I want. ERGHUMMMM. Iruka-sensei cleared his throat loudly. Naruto looked over and saw his former sensei with a scroll in hands covering his face and over a foot above his head even as his head was crouched down on his desk. The scene had obviously become too much for him to bear any longer and he was using the scroll to block his view of the uncomfortable foreplay happening in front of him. Hanabi started. She looked at herself and turned beet red at the way she was straddling Naruto's leg. She quickly released Naruto and promptly fought her wobbly legs to stand before failing on her butt. Naruto laughed at her feeble attempt to stand. It's okay, the jelly legs go away in about 10 minutes. You really are a cherry getting that way from so little. He teased and laughed again. She blushed even redder. Yeah, how long does the feeling of wanting you jump you last, because it's a lot worse than the wiggly legs. She thought in frustration that Iruka was in the room and stopped him, yet happy he did at the same time. Naruto, the class is waiting for you. Uruka hinted loudly while still covering his face with a scroll. Right, Uruka-sensei. Hanabi, remember you're to be at the training ground in 45 minutes. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. He yelled as 30 shadow clones appeared and they all filed out like a troop of soldiers to a cheering class of students. Uruka finally put down his scroll to see Hanabi barely keeping herself upright plopped on her knees lazily. "Oh Kami, aren't you Hyuga heiress?" he said worriedly. Her head was hanging limply on her shoulders and she gave him a half turn of the head and said, "Yeah, that's me. I'm going to take a nap." As she collapsed in a heap on the floor, out like light. "Kami, I almost think I should have watched so I knew what I am getting myself into. I've got to take her home. I just hope Hiyashi isn't there to see her like this," he thought as he cringed. The 30 Narutos we all teaching the students. Most of them were learning the clone jutsu, a few were starting to walk up trees, but 2 were way ahead of the class. A fiery red-haired, emerald-eyed boy that wore his hair in thick spikes like Naruto's hair named Rukian. The other was Haruki, a pretty blue-eyed blonde that wore her hair in a long braided ponytail that was just starting to get her womanly curves. Both of them on the outside were bitter rivals. Rukian didn't want to be beaten by a girl and Haruki thought Rukian was a screw-up and didn't want to be considered at his level. "Okay, I'm going to teach you ninjutsu today," he said before being cut off by their cheers. "Yes. Finally," Rukian said as he threw his fist in the air. Silence. Naruto shouted as the both became dead still and absolutely quiet. Naruto said, "I had to get the Hokage's permission to teach you two this ninjutsu. She agreed to let me teach one of you, but I had to persuade her to let me teach the other. Aw man, I don't want to be in her shadow," Rukian stated loudly while pointing at Haruki. "Aha, so you admit it," she yelled while pointing at him. "I admit nothing," he said as he crossed his arms and stuck his tongue out at her. Naruto thought, kinda funny, but Rukian was the one I got approval from first and I had to fight to get Haruki's. Oh well, no sense letting them know that. Naruto pulled out 3 blue water balloons and dropped them on the ground. He reached down and picked one up. He held it out in front of him, the surface of the water balloon got very bumpy then exploded. He reached down and picked up the other 2 balloons and tossed them to his students. "Now it's your turn," he smiled. This ought to keep them off my butt for a while," he thought. Uruka-sensei managed to drop Hanabi off at the Hyuga house without a problem by telling them she sparred with Naruto and he used genjutsu to put her to sleep. Kami, what a lame excuse. Naruto and genjutsu shouldn't even be in the same sentence, he thought while hiding his face with his hand in shame. Hanabi was lying on her bed some time later and she could hear the water in the bathroom running. She knew the servant was running the bath for her, but she didn't want to get up. She was too relaxed and just wanted to sleep in her soft bed. The bathroom door opened and steam followed out into her bedroom. "The bath is ready for you, Hanabi, and I've set out a fresh change of clothes for you. Don't take long. Sage Naruto expects you at the training grounds in 20 minutes. The servant said as she left the room. She groaned, pulling a pillow over her face. "How can I face him? I practically humped his leg. Wait, I think I did hump his leg." She blushed. She threw the pillow off her face and then headed to the bathroom to clean herself up. She touched her cheek in front of the mirror where the tree branch had struck her, leaving a mark. It was gone, like someone had healed it. She discounted it. Maybe it didn't hit me as hard as I thought. She showered quickly and put on the fresh cloths the servant had set out for her and headed off to the training ground with dread in her thoughts. When she arrived, she stood on her normal tree. She saw the normal scene. Hundreds on Naruto's doing everything from walking on water to practicing the pervert snuggle. "So are you going come down and train or are you going to stick to the peeping Tom routine?" Naruto stated from right next to her. Hanabi jumped so badly she started to fall from the tree she was in. Naruto grabbed her, wrapping both arms around her and gently leaned into her fall. They both flipped over slowly in the air, landing perfectly upright on the ground. Air, damn that show off. I don't care what he does, I'm still telling him off for pulling that stunt at the academy. Naruto let her go and headed back to the center of the training ground with a smile. Now wait a minute. The young Hyuga yelled. What the hell was that at the academy you pulled? Maybe I should let my father or the Hokage know how you assaulted me. Naruto turned back around and almost instantly closed the gap of 25 feet between them. Hanabi wasn't expecting Naruto to move that fast, and it took her a second to refocus her eyes on him. Naruto's brilliant sapphire eyes were now cold orbs of steel, and his look was so stern that she could have sworn it was her father using a henge jutsu to look like Naruto. Go ahead and tell them of your failure. His voice was sharp and accusing. Failure. She stammered, outraged at his words. That's right, Hanabi. You tried to strike me, so you started our duel. You lost. Not to ninjutsu or genjutsu or even taijutsu. You lost to simple seduction. How many times do you think I could have killed you during our duel? Even a clumsy civilian with a kunai could have killed you a dozen times without a problem at the way you reacted to my movements. He spat, drenched in venom. Hanabi's face went blank. She was going to tell him off, and she was the one getting told off. Oh Kami. I think that was a test and I failed horribly. Naruto continued. It took all of what? 8 seconds before you were willing me to continue. Before Iruka-sensei interrupted, I was about 2 seconds from drop you on your butt anyway. Hanabi didn't move her blank look, but she blushed a shade of bright red. Naruto said. One of the most basic tactics is to henge yourself to look like a teammate. And infiltrate their 3-man squad while one of their members are away to catch the other 2 members with their guard down. How easy would it be to slip some poison into their food when they aren't looking, when you think they're a friend and you're not watching them like a foe? His steeled expression still locked onto her eyes. Think, Hanabi, how it would look on this village if the Hyuga heiress was killed by a cute guy with a dazzling smile and a poison needle. He stated. Hanabi hung her head in shame. He's right, he beat me with one of the first things any ninja is taught. Know your enemy and know your allies. Naruto thought. I think I was a bit too hard on her, but it's for her own good and the good of the team. Kami knows I get enough attention from horny young girls already. I don't need one in this team making things worse. Naruto knew this all too well. Once the village realized Naruto was one of the most powerful ninjas in history and that he saved the village a number of times. The girls just started coming out of the woodwork trying to date him. Naruto even had his own female fan club. At first he thought it was so cool. He soon realized that having 50 horny young women chasing after you got old really fast. He started dating Ion just to get them to leave him alone back then.